Hey, everybody. Happy Sunday. We're doing the Bourbon Talk again. We have, we still have the fancy camera. But after the last time, with what happened with the audio, fancy mic, taking a break. Fancy camera, good. Fancy mic, taking a break. Not sure what happened there. We'll get that figured out. We got a really good show tonight. We got a lot of questions, a lot of things to talk about. First things first, brand new bottle of Bullet. Don't say I don't take these things seriously. Let's pour a little bit. We're going to need it tonight because we got some really important stuff to talk about. We got some tough talk to have tonight. Some real stuff that we got to talk about tonight. First off, cheers. Couple of house cleaning notes before we get going. One, it's my mother's 70th birthday this week. So I just want to say from everybody, because she watches these things, because she loves her baby boy, happy birthday, Mom. I hope you have a fantastic week. Best mom in the world, period. And I mean this. I would not be alive still if it weren't for her. And I wouldn't be the person that I am if it wasn't for her. I have no idea who I'd be if my mom hadn't affected me and helped me become the man that I am. So happy birthday to her. Second, another piece of house cleaning. I just taped the first episode of the Midnight Kingdom lecture series. So this week, what's left is some editing, some stuff around the edges. The first episode of that will be coming out. Right now, it's about an hour and a half. And it goes from Rome and the fall of Rome to the founding of the United States of America, which is a stretch. But yeah, it's going to be, I think, about 5 episodes taking place over the next few months. I was really happy with it, really happy with how it turned out. And it felt good to get in front of the board and get the marker out, get some notes down. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be releasing it through this YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to that. That way, when it comes out, directly to you. Also, got a couple of things to announce. As we talked about on the podcast, the Muckrake podcast is going to be teaming up with the Democracy-ish podcast with Danielle Moody and Wajahat Ali. We're going to do alternative election night coverage. And thank God we are, because I don't know how to tell you, folks, the media, they ain't cutting it right now. They're not cutting it. So really excited about that. Danielle and Waj are terrific people. Hopefully you'll join us for that. We were hoping to do something like that for election night, and the opportunity came up, and we were really pumped for that. Danielle and Waj are 2 of the people who tell it like it is and are actually tuned in to what's going on. So we're pretty pumped about that. So we got questions, and like I said a couple seconds ago, we got some hard talk to have tonight. We got some tough truths that we have to face up to and prepare ourselves for. Now, that doesn't mean that all hope is gone. It doesn't mean that things aren't going to turn out all right. It just means things are getting a little tough, and we have to have a conversation about what that means and what our place in it is. Before we do that, I posted a thing on Substack today called "The Myth of the Left," and I gotta tell you, I have not gotten emails like that in a long time. Apparently, it struck a nerve with some people. They weren't particularly happy to hear that the left as a power base doesn't actually exist right now, and it has become a scapegoat and a straw man uh, fear-mongering tool for the right. I got a lot of emails from people on one hand who said that I did this to somehow or another submarine the Democratic Party, which is something I'm accused of pretty regularly because I'm not a dyed-in-the-wool partisan who will just simply legitimize everything that they do. Part of the conversation we're going to have tonight is about the fact that, my God, the Democratic Party has not been carrying its weight. It just hasn't. And there's a lot to talk about in that regard, and we'll get to it. I got a lot of emails from people on the right who are absolutely convinced and have been convinced for a while that I am obviously a deep state, new world order operative, possibly a CIA psyop, which is one of my favorite conspiracy theories about me. That I am that my name, and this is always fun, that my name sounds the way it does, Jared Yates Sexton, because I am technically a cultural elite. Like, I come from money, but I dress down in order to somehow or another promote myself as a man of the people. And as a result, I'm going in almost as a Judas goat in order to mislead people. So obviously I'm a psyop, because again, there was a Jared Sexton who published before me. I had to go with my middle name, which may sound aristocratic, but I am named after a Clint Eastwood character on the TV show Rawhide. Again, happy birthday, mom. So I got a lot of feedback, it's a way of putting it, from this because people do not like recognizing that our simplified surface level politics don't cut it and that they actually have no relationship with reality. Simply saying the left and the right, it has created a problem not just in understanding, but actually in the way things are carried out. And as I talked about in this article, the right uses the left as a scapegoat, even though the left has been absolutely decimated. And that wasn't on accident. It actually, speaking of actual conspiracies, it was an actual conspiracy to wipe out the left after World War II in order to undermine any potential challengers to American hegemony in the war against the Soviet Union in the Cold War. They used incredible technology. They used transnational, cooperation to go after leftists literally everywhere in every country. And as I talked about on this article, including the United States of America, where Chile um, bombed a political exile to death in Washington, D.C., and killed an American citizen and wounded her husband. This was carried out for decades. The labor movement was absolutely decimated and destroyed. That this was, part of a larger push to get to cheaper labor and help the capitalist create this situation. Um, so the left doesn't particularly exist. That doesn't mean that there aren't leftists. Again, I identify as a leftist. I assume some of the people here in this conversation tonight identify as leftist. But leftists do not hold any actual political power in the United States of America, and particularly around the world. There are a couple of places where they're starting to rise up and reject neoliberalism and the such. Um, when people say, "Oh, what about Bernie Sanders?" Bernie Sanders is an independent senator who, though he was able to challenge the party in terms of gaining the nomination, he was effectively shut out and has been largely shut out of power structures. People point to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a leftist by definition, but isn't really brought in for the main pushes, the main campaigns, the main efforts. The squad, as it were, is rejected by not only the Republican Party, but also the Democratic Party to a large extent, and the sort of publications and mouthpieces of the United States of America. When people say the left, it's literally just fear mongering, and this has always been the case. The right have always pushed further and further right into authoritarianism, dragging their cultures along with them. And the way that they do that is they create the scapegoat of the left, which moderates and centrists then say, oh my God, can you believe these leftists? We have to moderate. We have to find the middle ground. And that middle ground is not solid. That middle ground is not stagnant. It's always moving. America has moved so far right that now, again, and I said this in the article, we're discussing whether or not individuals should have rights. We're discussing whether or not people should be safe or whether or not they should have autonomy over their bodies. That's not a leftist discussion. Talking about real history is not a leftist idea. Does it help leftist ideas? Absolutely it does, because it highlights systemic inequality and exploitation. But that doesn't mean that these cultural debates that we're having have anything to do with the left. Cancel culture, wokeness, all of these things are just scapegoats that the right and the middle both use in order to pursue their political projects. And we'll talk more about this in a second, because we need to discuss what's happening in this country. This country is moving even further right. This country is being pushed consistently to the right, and we are getting ready to experience a reaction. And the question is, what comes from that reaction? And the original reaction, this is a counter reaction to a reaction. The original action was to Donald Trump and Trumpism and just the open sort of misogyny and racism and xenophobia and authoritarianism of Trumpism. And there was a natural cultural reaction to that. Of course, Me Too happens. We start, probing those necessary past transgressions. Cancel culture happens because people say, you know what, I may not have a lot of political power, but I don't want to spend my money with these people. And in a way, neoliberalism, and this is one of the main tenets of neoliberalism, it goes ahead and it destroys the ability to have much in the way of mass politics or organizing or, any sort of a grassroots movement. Instead, we vote with our dollars. And that's what cancel culture is. And that's what woke corporations are. It's a bunch of corporations that are not actually leftist, but they're expressing to the consumer products that are supposedly leftist. And if you buy this product or if you consume this product, then that is an expression of who you are. And as a result, you get a lot of TV shows, you get a lot of movies, you get a lot of products, and on their surface, they seem leftist, right? They're promoting like change. They're promoting an address. They're starting to address inherent system inequalities, but it's only a representation of that. It's just entertainment. It's saying, "Hey, go ahead and watch this television show, watch this movie, and feel like that you have leftist ideas," because leftist leftist ideas are actually growing. People understand that things are not right. People understand that this system is inherently exploitative and that it doesn't work. And as this system starts to fall apart, you're starting to see more and more polls. People are like, think with socialism a little bit. I'm thinking about redistribution a little bit. That can't happen. The left has to be put down. And there is a natural alliance that takes place between the right and the center. There are a lot of so-called liberals. There are a lot of so-called never Trumpers. There are a lot of so-called resistors who are being won over by this argument right now. And because it doesn't involve Trump. Because it doesn't involve an obviously racist, sexist, dangerous buffoon, they're starting to be like, well, you know what? Maybe the Republicans can do a better job. And maybe all this stuff is out of control. And this is why you're consistently seeing these articles, New York Times, Washington Post. You're seeing, segments on the news where not only are they legitimizing things like, Ron DeSantis, like kidnapping refugees and sending them elsewhere, they're also talking again, what's happening on the campuses? What's happening? And as that happens, they're warning about the left, right? Because the entire purpose of the center is to say, that's too far. I want things to maintain the way that they are. And things are inherently unequal. They are run through with white supremacy, they're run through with misogyny, they're run through with classism, all the way top to bottom. They consistently find common ground with right wing reactionaries. And they do it because they want to protect their own wealth, they want to protect their own property, and they want to protect their own power. We have seen that throughout history. By the way, Midnight Kingdom, over my shoulder. If you haven't pre-ordered it, go ahead and pre-order it, by the way. But this is a lot of what I get into and a lot of what I discovered, which is this consistently happens. As the society starts to lose faith in things, and as the system starts to be troubled, and as people start questioning those things, all of a sudden what you find are that moderates or so-called liberals, people who, and by the way, it costs nothing to espouse principles. It costs absolutely nothing to say, I care about people and I don't think people should be made uncomfortable and I don't think people should be mistreated. That doesn't cost anything. But I'll tell you what does cost something, and that's reordering. That's change. It costs something because you might lose something. And we have a lot of people in this society who just really, really want people to think that they're good. And yeah, they may have wealth, and yeah, they may have power. They might have influence, but they deserve it, which is a large part of the cultural backlash that we've seen. There is a new counter reactionary reaction that is coming, and we're watching it. And so that's why we have to get to the questions. And before I get into these questions, I want to say something very definitively. We're getting ready to talk about some hard things. And as we talk about those hard things, I want you to remember that just because things are hard doesn't mean that they're always going to be hard. Just because things are tough doesn't mean that they have to continue being tough. And as we're talking about it, I also want to go ahead and say another thing, which is there are no options to give up. There are no options to sit back and say, you know what, I'm done. This is awful. There's nowhere to go. There's no other country to escape to. Because this thing, if America goes down this road that it's going down, it's all around the world. Because America is the main driver of world culture and politics and economics. And what we're watching right now with neoliberal globalism is we're watching it start to lose power. And we're watching it start to sort of crumble a little bit. And the solutions are very simple. One solution is that we change things. We look at what isn't working, we look at what has caused problems, and we either make massive change or we try some different things. Okay? The second option is we keep going down the road that we're on, and the authoritarian right wing takes over the means of production as well as the economy and basically creates an austerity state in which authoritarianism installs discipline in people and makes them work for cents on the dollar, if cents. So before we get going and before we start having the tough talk that we need to have, the first part of this is saying there's no option. There's no option. You're in this fight. And if you care about other people, if you care about the people you love, if you want a better future, you're in it. That's it. And I'm sorry to say it. This isn't going to be easy. I never said it was going to be easy. We've been doing this now for a few years. Every time I get on here, every time I get on a podcast, every time I talk to somebody, every time I do an interview, I say, listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat this thing. I'm not going to tell you that this is suddenly going to just work out, or that Garland or Comey or Mueller, any of them, nobody's going to come into the arena and solve this situation. We have to stop looking for saviors. This thing is tough. It's really, really tough. And it's going to be hard. So let's get to it. Mar-a-Lago safe opener. It's a funny handle, by the way. There's times, by the way, there are always times I kind of wish that I would have had a handle. I just would have went by that. It seems like a good move. Not have your name out there and people saying that you're a psyop because you got to use your 3 names because there's a professor in California that got there first. Mar-a-Lago safe opener. What are your gut predictions for the midterms? It's not going to be good. Momentum is turned. And right now, and we'll talk more about this in a second, why this has happened and why it's occurring. I think the safe bet right now is that the Republicans they rack up some victories. I think they'll probably get the House, and there's a really good chance they'll get the Senate, depending on what happens in Georgia and Pennsylvania. Um, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for a myriad reasons. One is because it's very, very hard for a incumbent president to maintain control. We love divided government in this country. To boot, the Democratic Party has run a really piss poor campaign. There's no other way to say it. You cannot tell me right now what the mass of the Democratic Party stands for. The thing that they have consistently done is that they protect the institutions, and the institutions are rotten. To simply say to the people, "Hey, keep having faith. I promise this thing's going to work out," doesn't do it. They have not gone after the Republican Party and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. They have not talked about how dangerous the Republican Party is, save for a couple of people here and there. And they simply have not communicated to the American people what they would even do if they got elected. They haven't. There is no plan to go ahead and codify Roe v. Wade. You can hear it all day long. Joe Biden will tell you, "Hey, if we maintain power, we're going to codify Roe v. Wade." Not going to happen. In all of this, and this is something I've been talking about for like the past month or two, the socioeconomic and political reasons behind Roe v. Wade getting overturned, they have to be dealt with in one way, shape, or form. You either go ahead and use the authoritarian measure and you take away women's rights and make them have kids, or you create a society in which people can afford to have kids. And they sure as hell don't want to do that. They have no desire right now to change the social safety net in any meaningful way. So, yeah, they're totally fine with, having this thing go down. In fact, a lot of the fundraisers think that this is the perfect way to, raise money. It's the same thing, by the way, that happened with the Republican Party for a while. The Republican Party for a while said, we're not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. We'll just fundraise off of it. It's a wonderful fundraiser. It's a wonderful carrot to get people to the polls. Democratic Party is going to use it for the exact same purposes for a while. If you want to win in the midterms, particularly as you control the White House, you have to put out an agenda. You have to say, "Hey, listen, give me more votes, and this is what I'll do with them." And the Democratic Party hasn't done that. So right now, unfortunately, I think that everything that we're seeing right now shows us that the Republican Party is going to rack up some victories. Now, here's the next question. Keep this in mind. And this is from Hairball. I've been feeling super discouraged. I know some of this is due to media propaganda that is trying to discourage us, but what if they, the Republicans, do win? That prospect terrifies me. What recourse do we have if all of the predictions are true? So let's have some tough talk. The discouragement is totally understandable. In times like these, get a little hit of bourbon here. We might go through a little bit of bourbon tonight. It's one of those nights. That's fine. We can drink a little bit of bourbon tonight. Discouragement is absolutely a rational feeling at this moment. Why? Because the Republican Party is not hiding who they are, and the Democratic Party is not rising to the challenge. That's a perfect reason to feel discouraged. And on top of that, the media, which is supposed to protect democracy and society itself, is just like, I don't know, maybe it's authoritarianism. There's a reason to be discouraged. What I would recommend is being pissed off. And this is the reason why. And here's where we got to have some tough talk. There is no room to give up the fight. None. And for a variety of reasons. And I'll start. I'll go ahead and make the case from a personal standpoint for everyone listening. This is the personal case. This is coming for you. Period. What's happening right now with the rollback of global capitalism, or at least globalism is the structure that carries capitalism. What's happening with that and what's happening with American decline? Look over at Great Britain because you need to understand something. Progress in terms of your rights and in terms of social safety nets and social services, whether or not it's healthcare in Britain or if it's Social Security in the United States of America or Medicare or even minimum wage or even regulations that keep you safe at work or that make sure that you can drink your water or breathe your air, those are luxuries. Those are not baked into the system because these systems are created explicitly for the wealthy and the powerful to maintain their wealth and power. If there are excess resources to spread around, let's say because the country is growing, let's say because the country is growing an empire, let's say because the United States of America is becoming the hegemonic force in the world. While that's happening and there are excess resources, oh my God, absolutely. Here, have some health care. Here, have Social Security. Here, have some social safety net. It's a business. And if you have ever been in a business and the numbers start going bad, the numbers start going in the red, or austerity starts getting taken out, all of a sudden, you start getting told no a lot. You start getting little things taken away. That's what's happening now. We're watching America in decline and the system of American hegemony go into decline, which means that if we continue down this road, and if we don't change our priorities, if we don't stop like letting the wealthy go without paying their taxes, if we don't stop all of our money being redistributed to the wealthiest people, plus also like military contractors, holy shit, people. Roe v. Wade's the opening shot because they need people, because they need workers. That's the opening shot. Everything else, it's literally like a tide that goes out. Oh, look, America is growing. We're getting all kinds of perks and we're getting a social safety net. Oh, America's in decline. All those things are gone. That's it. That's it. And the Republicans are especially good at being able to be the people that say, sorry, things suck. Your life now sucks. That's what they do. That's who they are. So here's the thing. If you in any way, shape, or form, and I don't think the people here, or even the people watching this video, or the people who usually watch these videos, I don't think you're the kind that think this way. But here's the thing. I would recommend share this video with people. Give it to a friend. Give it to family members. Give it to the people around you. Because I'm about to make an argument that it isn't Democratic and it isn't Republican. It's American. If you are sitting at home and you think, I mean, it's just the trans people. It's just the gay people. I mean, it's just women in red states. It doesn't stop there. This right now is the beginning of something much larger. And you are going to be on the wrong side of it at some point. It may not be tomorrow. It might not be next year. It might not be after 2024. It might be 2030. I don't know. But I'm telling you right now that if this decline and this death spiral continues, you're going to be on the wrong side of it. Right now, it might feel good when if this is a Republican watching this, it might feel good when a GOP personality or someone on Fox News like triggers the libs. I get that that feels good. There's something really primal about that. There's a warfare to it, right? I get that. And maybe you think, well, the gay people, the trans people, the feminists, maybe they need to be put in their place. I listen. You tell yourself the stories that make things happen, that help you sleep at night. That's fine. Brother, it's coming for you. period. Because the people who are doing this, they don't care about you. They don't care about your family. They don't care about any of these people. This is why they didn't help you during COVID. They made sure that you got COVID 4 or 5 times, and the older people in your family and the people with comorbidities, that they died. They don't care about you. They have never cared about you, period. And I'm sorry, but they just don't. Your enemies may get the hurt first, but it's coming for you. That is the personal, self-interested, selfish reason that you should reject this. It's a very famous thing that was said on the internet, and I'm just going to repeat it because it's important. I don't know how to make you care about other people. I don't know how to sit here and tell you that whatever amount of money that you have, whatever property you have, whatever it is that you enjoy, whatever it is that makes your life comfortable, it's not worth people being exploited. It's not worth people being oppressed. It's not worth any of this. You can have a better world. And this is the reason that I understand being discouraged. I understand being frustrated. I understand, and listen, there's a part of me that wishes that I could turn this off. And I understand that if I'm on social media or if I'm doing a stream like this or I'm on a podcast or whatever, listen, this isn't fun. This is not an enjoyable thing. I don't like sitting here and talking about this ugly shit. I don't like it. I don't like when I'm talking to people and they say, "Oh man, that's a bummer. That sucks. I wish that I could turn this off. I wish that this was something that I could pull out of as well." I know that feeling, but there is none of that. And I got to tell you, everything that we are taught about politics in the United States of America is, oh, it's the next election. And that's the Super Bowl. You either win or you lose the Super Bowl. That's it. That is not what's happening. They're probably going to win. And our media and our political class is normalizing it because they need austerity hatchet men. That's what they're into. That's what they need. And I got to tell you, it's going to get bad. It just is. But you can't give up hope. People are going to need you. People in your life, people around the country. You cannot simply give up on this thing. And I said this a couple of years ago, and it needs repeated now. This is very, very important. It's not enough to simply focus on elections. We have to build solidarity. We have to build grassroots movements. We have to build things that will pressure this system to get better. And in order to do that, you have to make a decision. You have to make a couple of decisions, actually. One, you have to decide, is it worth it? Because there are a lot of so-called liberals, a lot of so-called resistance people, a lot of so-called never-Trumpers who are about to say, you know what? This is great. This is totally fine. We do need to change things. And we'll get into why that happens here in a second and the economic purpose behind it. A lot of people are going to go down that route. And maybe that might feel good because you're gonna be able to stop worrying about this. You're gonna be able to not pay attention to elections. You're gonna be able to turn off the noise. And listen, I understand the appeal. I totally get it. I get why some people will take that pill. But again, I just want to reiterate, it's coming for you too. Period. It's coming for you. The second thing that you have to decide, the second decision that you need to make is this. What do you want? It's not enough to simply say, I want Republicans to lose elections, because then we're just in a zero sum back and forth. It's literally trench warfare. That's not enough. What do you want? What do you want the world to look like? How do you want the world to operate? What does a fairer, better, more human future actually look like? You start making those choices and you start deciding these things. We can start fighting for something. We can make something out of this fucking world. But you got to make those decisions. Like, a lot of us have been watching this and a lot of us have been worrying about this, and a lot of people just treat it like sports. And I was saying earlier in this chat, like, I love sports as much as anyone, but this isn't sport. This isn't sport. This is the fate of not just a country and a people, but, like, I mean, it's the fate of the world. We could enter a new dark age. I mean, climate change is gonna be a game changer, man. Game changer. Now, Janelle Forsyth, and this will be interesting, we gotta talk about this. What are your thoughts on all of these polls showing that voters prefer Republicans on the economy? Do you think Democrats would have had a better shot to keep Congress if they prioritized democratic reform? First of all, yes, I absolutely think that's the case. I think if Democrats would have said, reelect us or elect us, give us more seats, and we're going to make sure that this attack on democracy gets taken care of. In fact, here is a list of things that we will do. Here's our agenda. Voters want an agenda, particularly when the sitting president is of that party. They want to hear what's going to change. And the Republicans, by the way, have tons of answers for what's going to change, right? At the very least, they're going to investigate Joe Biden. In the very least, they're going to investigate the FBI. At the very least, they're going to investigate the January 6th committee. Just keep naming it, right? You got to give them an alternative. The second part, the economic part, is really, really important. And here's the truth. The problem with inflation is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not the Democratic Party's fault. In fact, it's a worldwide phenomenon that's taking place because neoliberal globalism is falling apart. And there is too much wealth concentrated in too few hands, and deregulation and mergers in the corporate world have created a situation where supply chains, there aren't redundancies. Things fall apart very, very quickly, as we have seen happen. On top of that, you have, I don't know, a reaction to the dying of neoliberal global order. You have the war in Ukraine, which has its own problems. You also have the fact that we're still shackled to fossil fuels, which we should have gotten off of decades ago. Joe Biden's not responsible. The Democrats are not responsible. But we live in a two-party system. And as a result, every election becomes, do you want things to continue the way they are, or do you want them to change? We never discuss what the change is, right? It's just, well, I don't like what's going on. Let's change. I don't like what's going on either, but I recognize that the Republican Party is an existential threat. But Republicans aren't good with economies. They crash them. Even if things are going bad, they take all of the brakes off and they just say, good luck. And they redistribute all of the money from one place to another, from the bottom to the top. That's all they got. That's all they've got. And with it, it just continually, it's amazing that we don't learn from these things and that we don't pay attention to history. But the Republican Party doesn't have an answer. The only thing that they have right now is, we will make the lives of the people you don't like worse. And somehow or another, that's going to fix things, but it will boomerang back. That's it. Katie says, yeah, the Michael Moore saying Republicans will win. Michael Moore, I think, is an interesting fellow because he comes from a working class, middle American background. And as a result, I think sometimes he's more incisive than a lot of the people in like coastal networks and such. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. Right now, everything that I'm seeing says the Republicans they're going to have some wins. I hope I'm wrong, but yeah. All right, I got two questions that are related. Lena Ray says, not a question, but please address those armed nutters watching voting boxes. Pam says, masked is hard to say. It's hard to say. Ammo carrying junta wannabes. It's a good insult. Videotaping voters and their license plates. If I did that to shoppers going into my grocery store, I'd be arrested. I don't understand. Why isn't someone in the federal government saying no to this? First of all, I tweeted about this the other day. I mean, this is how liberal democracies die. Free and fair elections turn into intimidation campaigns, and we should probably expect more of that. The federal government should absolutely be curbing this right now, but they might react to it after the fact. That's a real possibility. Or maybe they won't. I don't know. I mean, maybe they won't even address it. But they're not interested in taking this extremism on head on. They're just not. They're worried about the consequences of it, whether it's arresting Donald Trump or, actually taking like threats to democracy seriously. They don't want to be seen as extreme. They don't want to be seen as, playing a role in partisanship or polarization. Tony says, I'll be honest, it's kind of shocking how right you've been about things. Is it weird for you? And if you had to say right now, what do you think the next 10 years will look like? First of all, yes, this whole thing has been very weird. Those of you who know the story of how I've even come to have a soapbox in political conversations know in 2016 I was covering Trump campaigns and reporting for them, and somehow or another I went viral. And since then, I've just literally been in a position where I'm like, "Oh my god, like, I gotta figure out what's going on." Like, suddenly some people wanna hear what I have to say, like, I need to kind of start to grasp that. So, basically, the last 6 years and us having these conversations and the podcast and the books and all of that, it's me supplementing ignorance, right? Like, I was always very good with politics and history, but, I it was a thin veneer of it, right? It's sort of the conventional ideas, and those explanations didn't make sense anymore. Donald Trump absolutely exploded them and took a lot of us out of our privilege and sort of made us, reconsider what had happened. So, the fact is, like, that I've been right on so much of this stuff, and that I've been calling out this extremism and authoritarianism, it's because I'm paying attention. And we'll talk about this on the podcast tomorrow. This Federalist article that just came out that was like we shouldn't call ourselves conservatives anymore, um, and it's obviously a call for fascism. I wasn't surprised by that at all because I've been paying attention to this shit for years. Like, this article is a little bit stale. I know it's shocking because it made it out into, like, the social media sphere and people were actually reading it. This is the stuff I've been reading from, like, the far right for a while. Like, if you read their papers, you read their books, you read their speeches, you read, any of those things, they're all there. Like, none of this is hidden. It just so happens that the people who should be reporting on this, they're not interested in it. What are all these reactionaries and hysterical people? What are they why are they like all up in arms, right? And they're like, "Oh yeah, I've read What Is to Be Done." Yeah, I've read that for sure. I read that while I was researching Midnight Kingdom. Yeah. Um But they simply said, "Oh, this is hysterical." And they were like, why would we spend any time on this? Why would we publish these people? Why would we talk about this? This is so obviously absurd, and obviously Trump isn't all that bad. It's just a bunch of resistance hysteria. Meanwhile, there are a bunch of us who have just been paying attention to this, and we've been, you know, locked in on it, and we've become experts on it. And as a result, we know what they believe, and we know what they want, and we know what they're planning. Like, being right about this is just looking at what's happening and not looking through a biased lens. It's saying, wow, there's some really gnarly shit happening. What's history say about this? What can we learn from the things that have occurred and what's going on now? So it's very weird. It's very odd doing this. Right? It's very strange that it's Sunday, and I'm sitting here with a few hundred people drinking bourbon and talking about threats against democracy. It's so cool, and it always means a lot to me that you wanna do this, and that anybody gives a damn what I have to say about anything. That is so cool, but it is weird. This whole thing is very, very weird, and knowing it's happening, knowing where it's going, and then watching it happen is very strange, and I say that a lot. I talk to a lot of people, Kinzier and I were talking today about this. It's, like, so bizarre knowing what's occurring, and everyone's just saying, "No, this isn't happening." It's strange. It's very, very strange. Tony asked about the next 10 years. I think we're gonna see a lot of power struggles between a resurgent left, and there's a lot of ways that there will be a resurgent left. I think in part because, the labor movement is growing and regrouping, and, I think that that is going to lead to, a new force that is going to oppose this growing authoritarianism. The question is whether or not the authoritarian right wins over the center, and whether it wins over these so-called liberals and these so-called resistors, right? Um, that's scary. It's really scary that that could possibly happen, but I think we're gonna watch a really wild back and forth, particularly as climate change, puts pressure on the situation, and as these ruling orders keep failing. I mean, what's happening in Britain is going to happen everywhere unless things change. I think the left's going to win out. I think the left, in some way, some shape, or form, is going to. Um, I think it's going to work out. It's going to be hard, though. Oh man, is it going to be hard? Lauren says, "What do I think will be the next right to be taken away?" I think there's a possibility of, I mean, affirmative action feels like it's probably on the chopping block. This independent state legislature thing is bad, real bad, and there's a lot wrapped up into that. But voting rights, because one of the things that's happening right now is that Republicans are going to benefit from a minoritarian system. And as they do that, they need to go ahead and knock out any Democratic opponents or problems or resistance. So I think voting rights are going to just continue to be eroded as this happens. Toonbox says, is it possible to make real change in the present under a constitution written in 1787 by rich slave owners for rich slave owners? I mean, that's the $64,000 question. I mean, this entire system was created, again, minoritarian institutions were created in order to stave off democracy. But what we have seen is that popular movements, populist movements, leftist movements, reform movements, they change things. And there's a lot of time where it feels like nothing could possibly ever change, and then there is a sudden upswell, that has been building for a while. Uh, you know, I'll say, to go ahead and give you a little glimpse of part of the reason why I'm hopeful. So if they start pushing things like, the destruction of regulations at work, or, anything from, like, minimum wage to the weekend or whatever, and they'll use Christian nationalism to go ahead and legitimize that. People are gonna fight back. I mean, some people are gonna be like, "Christian nationalism, absolutely. There is a white God who absolutely supports the United States of America, and there's a satanic conspiracy against him and us. I'm gonna work, and that's going to be the way that I show this God that I am worthy of his love and his glory." There will absolutely be people that do that, and I wanna point out, and I want you to remember this, there are gonna be people in your life that you never for a moment would have imagined that they would go along with this shit. I'm telling you. Like, when this thing starts going, when it starts gaining momentum, there are gonna be some people in your lives that are going to shock you, and it's already started. Trump wasn't all that bad. DeSantis isn't all that bad. The left is dangerous, you name it. There's gonna be some people, and there are gonna be people that you complained about Trump with, and it's gonna be people that you complained about the treatment of immigrants with. There are gonna be some people that you have had conversations with that, like, you're gonna wake up one day and you're gonna be like, "What in the hell happened to you?" Because that's the way this occurs. That's the way this gains power. That's the way that this takes over society. But I'm not gonna work for cents on the dollar. I don't think you're gonna work for cents on the dollar. I'm not gonna buy into Christian nationalism. I'm not gonna buy into this idea that there is an American God and we have to serve him. Screw that, man. And I'm gonna fight, and you're gonna fight, and other people are gonna fight. And I gotta tell you right now, you feel powerless right now, you feel alone right now, get in the middle of a labor battle. Get in the middle of a live labor battle. And I gotta tell you that in some of these organizers, or some of these organized drives and some of these solidarity movements, like you got some people, you got some people who are like, you know what, I voted for Donald Trump, but this is ridiculous. Like that starts making political affiliations and political ideologies, it starts making it feel weird. It starts changing things. So I think as they push for this, as they're cutting Social Security, as they're cutting Medicaid, as they're cutting away regulations, as they're rolling back that progress, I think there's going to be a hell of a battle. And I think you're going to see a lot of people who felt alone, who felt powerless. They're suddenly going to realize that they're not alone and that they're not powerless. And we're going to see there's going to be some clashes. And for those who don't know the history of the labor movement, this is not a sanitized struggle. This isn't just like votes. This isn't just picket lines. Like there's bloodshed. And there are times in labor struggles where like it begins to look a lot like civil war and sectarian violence. And I got to tell you, whew, we're gearing up for some stuff. That's all I got to say. So the next 10 years, I think the left is going to be resurgent. And I think we're going to see the pursuit of exploitation be met with a lot of solidarity. I'll just say that. Jake. Oh, and by the way, just to wrap that up, because Toonback asked about the Constitution thing, like before the progressive movement made the noise that it made, before the civil rights movement made the noise they made, it didn't seem possible to change that Constitution and change the order. What's the problem right now is that the new emerging consensus isn't being challenged. The new right is the only thing offering big giant solutions. They're terrible, they're brutal, but they're offering a change. The problem here is that the Democratic Party isn't offering a change. It just isn't. The only people offering a change are the people outside the Democratic Party who don't have power. They're the people in the organizing. They're the people in the labor movement. Those are the people who want to change things. It's people in like conversations like this. Those are the people that want to change things. Democratic Party wants to protect institutions. They want things to continue as they were over and over and over again, with the exception of a few. But change often seems impossible until it seems inevitable. Jake, listen, I'm sorry, but I need to know what your thoughts are on the Jorts the Cat Instacart controversy. I'm going to read that sentence again because you'll never hear these words in this order come out of my mouth again. From Jake. Listen, I'm sorry, but I need to know what your thoughts are on the Jorts the Cat Instacart controversy. This is a very online thing that has occurred. So Jorts the cat, I can't believe we're talking about this. What a weird political moment we're living in. Jorts the cat is a social media account that is based on a office cat who went viral, and this person now speaks for Jorts the cat. Jorts the cat the other day commented on a story about a person confronting their Instacart supplier. I don't know what you would call them. Their Instacart shopper, going to the store and confronting them. Jorts the cat, which has turned weirdly enough into a labor account, um, said, why don't you go buy groceries yourself if you're going to yell at the Instacart shopper? Immediately, everybody on the internet yelled at the Jorts the cat account. I refuse to say it's Jorts the cat because that's not the person doing it, saying that it was an instance of ableism and that they had not taken in consideration people who aren't able to go to the store and aren't able to go out and get their own foods. A very online thing, as Stephanie says. It absolutely is. I will say this. One thing about social media is that it is absolutely run as a profit-making center that profits off of conflict and miscommunication. The fact That we only have 280 characters on Twitter automatically makes our message incapable of communicating everything that it needs to say, and as a result, misunderstandings and whatever isn't brought up goes back and forth. That's a problem. Secondary, the Instacart part is part of this gig economy. One of the most dangerous things that we have going. Anybody who is carrying out gig work, anybody who's going out and getting DoorDash, Grubhub, Instacart, Uber, you name it, they're being exploited. And they are being exploited because the economy has created this independent contractor thing that is a really ingenious and insidious invention to get around labor laws, which brings us back to what we were talking about. In all of this, I will say this: we need to be able to say gig work is exploitative. We also need to start pushing back against a culture of consumerism in which we want everything immediately and the way that we want it. Just a quick word: we need to treat service workers well, waiters, waitresses, the people who are not paid enough, and the people who are just scraping to make things to get things by. Period. You have to treat service workers well. That is baseline, non negotiable. It's not a leftist idea. It is a human solidarity idea. Period. That's what I'll say about it. This is a very online thing, but I wanted to talk about it because I think it's important to talk about the fact that these people that we're treating badly in the service industry deserve to be paid well and they deserve to be respected. Period. And it's funny, anybody who's worked in the service industry feels this way. And by the way, cheers to everybody who, like myself, has worked in the service industry. Cheers. Jorts the cat. Jorts, what are you doing? It's not Jorts the cat. It's a cat. Can't do it. Can't do it. Hallie Lawrence. Okay, maybe this is weird, but how do you watch movies? I've heard you on the pod with Nick talking about movies and analyzing them, and I've heard you go off about Marvel movies. I followed you for years, and I don't know how you can just experience things, if that makes sense. Man, I love movies. Absolutely love movies. It's one of the reasons why Nick and I have talked about movies so much on the podcast. Not only do we love movies and cinema, but also I think it's a really good way to talk about politics to give people an entry point through films and pop culture that they watch. That doesn't mean that everything that I watch through a political lens or an analysis lens. A lot of the times I'm able to just shut off. And sometimes my mind will start like wondering a little bit and it'll start thinking about, the political and socioeconomic parts of it, the thematic elements, if you will. And that also, by the way, happens because I've taught screenwriting for a long, long time. But I got to tell you, I just I I'm sometimes able to shut it off. And whenever the mind starts getting ready to go in that direction, I literally just have to tell it, "No, not right now. Not right now." Which is nice. It's really nice to just be able to say, "No, not right now. We'll think hard later. We'll think hard later," which I think is important. And going back to that idea of being discouraged and feeling a lack of energy or whatever, like, you have to be able to have those moments where you shut off your brain, whether or not it's sports or movies or whatever. Like, there are times to go ahead and analyze things because you learn a lot about culture. I mean, the Marvel movies are absolutely a neoliberal myth-making machine that tells people, "Hey, don't worry, there are forces out there that take care of things." And yes, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and sometimes a movie is just a movie. But my God, you don't have the Marvel phenomenon without having the system that we have right now. So sometimes you analyze these things and other times you just watch things. That's it. Period. And, it's like Halloween right now is a really good time to do that. Like, I've been making my way through a bunch of horror movies and a bunch of Halloween movies. That's enjoyable. It's just like letting entertainment go down to like the reptilian part of it. But, you know, studying right-wing authoritarianism and the decline of democracy and, radicalization, conspiracy theories, all of that. Studying that stuff takes a lot out of me. It's really, really exhausting. and it takes a toll. I mean, I've aged so much in the past 6 years. If you have watched any of this stuff, I have aged, and you just gotta be able to enjoy some stuff sometimes. You just have to. Which, by the way, speaking of, we're going up on an hour. We only have a couple more questions. We'll get to those, but before we do, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Cheers to you, cheers to me, cheers to future victory. This bullet's really good. I was looking forward to this. Not just talking about this stuff, but also drinking a little bourbon. It's nice. That's another thing. Drinking bourbon, because I've been doing this, doing these live streams, like just starting to enjoy what like the liquor tastes like, and just sort of spending some time with it. That's nice. Eating a good meal, watching a good movie. You gotta remind yourself what you're fighting for sometimes. I say that all the time. You have to treasure your victories, because politics will absolutely rip your heart out. And we cheers at an hour because we got to an hour, because it's a nice round number. That's why we cheers an hour. I don't know. I started doing it. So we started doing it. But yeah, like if we're gonna keep fighting this thing and have very few victories along the way, it's like you have to figure out the things that are worth fighting for. And culture is worth fighting for. People are worth fighting for. Yeah. All right. Got a couple more questions, and we'll bring this plane in for a landing. Natalie, serious question. Can the book come out earlier? Like American Rule, I kind of feel like this stuff needs to get out there. Well, that's very cool of you. And I have to tell you, as somebody who releases books, it's really, really hard to do. Because it's like you write the book and then it's just sort of sitting there, and like particularly the books that I write are about the moment. Like this book, actually, interesting couple of things. I'm going in to do the audiobook not this week but next week, which I'm really excited about, that I get to do the audiobook. But like you write this book, and like you're predicting like the collapse of like the neoliberal order, and then you start watching what's happening in Ukraine, and what's happening with China, and what's happening with the American empire, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, like this stuff is happening, and I want it out so bad. So this comes out in January. I wish so bad that it was coming out sooner. Um, it's really bad. Yeah, so this is an ARC, which is an advanced reading copy. So right now, let's go ahead and just look at it. So right now it's coming in at 302 pages at this size, which is probably where it'll be for the hardcover. Really proud of this thing. No, it's real. This is actually real. I could just open it up and read. While America was being dominated by the forces of capitalism, Russia was experiencing convulsions that would put the two states on the collision course that defined much of the 20th century. That's the beginning of a section. So I'm really excited. I wish it was coming out. I'm really upset that it's not out, and that it's not coming out sooner. But hopefully by the time it comes out in January, it will be able to comment on what's going on. Because I mean, it's where things are going, unfortunately. John says, do you have any hidden talents? Any hidden talents? I mean, there's a couple of things I've got. One, and I didn't realize this until I became an adult, because I always hated running. I'm really good at running. And by that, I mean, I don't mean that I'm fast. It's just I can run for long distances every single day. I'm good at that. I don't know what the deal is. I can run 7 to 8 miles every single day. I don't know why I'm good at that, but I'm good at it. Like, it doesn't break down my bones. It doesn't break down my body. It's cool. That's a cool thing that I can do. I'm also really good at um, like dumb math tricks. I'm terrible at math. But I'm really good at having things. I'm really good at like figuring out tips. It's weird. And part of it is, and this is a dumb little story, and I'll tell it to you real fast. My grandmother, when I was weird, um, she bought this series of tapes that were about math secrets. And this taught me how to do math outside of, like, regular school. So, like, I learned how to do, like, these weird, shortcuts and stuff, and it absolutely ruined me for standard math lessons. I was a terrible math student because I had learned this weird thing. I also can speed read, which is a really cool skill. It's been useful, particularly in research, and I learned how to speed read, because I taught a bunch of first year composition. And, like, I would get, like, 125 essays, 3 to 5, 6 pages, and as a result, I learned how to basically take these, like, mental snapshots of each page. So I'm able to I if I want to, I can take down a book pretty fast. So I'm able to speed read. That has served me really, really well. Almost forgot about that because 'cause it's been a while since I've been doing, like, major research. By the way, I just finished a book proposal for the next book. We'll talk more about that soon. So that was a little bit of research that I had to do. All right, last 2 questions. TT hiking. Um, Read this snippet of a Washington Post article about retired military people working with Saudi Arabia to train military. This can't go well. Funny enough, this was actually part of the research that I was doing for the new book proposal. Fun fact, Saudi Arabia, which of course played a major role in September 11th, let's just leave it at that. On the other side of the war on terror, has now poached a ton of American experts, including generals, admirals, veterans, and they have just spent an absolute shit ton of money scalping away American resources that came from the war on terror. In all of this, it's important to point out that Saudi Arabia has made it unbelievably obvious how wealth corrupts and how, the fact that they have tons of this money from fossil fuel, it allows them to basically do whatever they want, whether it's assassinating American journalists or, carrying out particular functions in September 11th or going out and getting these people. It's really screwed up. It's really, really messed up. But if you need any more proof that this stuff is corruptive, Saudi Arabia should show you. And yeah, it's really scary, particularly, and we were talking about this on the podcast. Um, you know, the fact that Saudi Arabia understands that, oh, Scott says it'll be unlivable there in 30 years. Don't worry, they're gonna block the sun out. That's the whole plan, or they're gonna create like underground cities or all of it. It's awful. Saudi Arabia knows that there is absolutely no consequence of going against the United States of America. Like, it's just totally built in. Like, they're golden no matter what happens. So now they're going to go ahead and take these resources and, pal around with Russia and China. All great. All right. Last question. Jake Hacks. Who could run in 2024 that changed so many topics of discussion like Bernie Sanders did in 16 and 20? For all the campaign faults, he did bring policy discussions to the Democratic Party. This is where I tell you that I don't think there's anybody. I think that Joe Biden's going to run again. I think we're going to see probably Biden DeSantis right now. And that is going to be a larger cultural and political discussion. There are people out there. There are people who could run that could change the discussion. There are people that would put up a better fight. I don't know that they are going to be ready in 2024. I think Biden's running again. A lot of people are saying Beto O'Rourke. I understand that. I get it. But no, I don't think Joe Biden should run again in 2024. I don't. But it is I think the Democratic Party, I think if Biden stepped aside, I think the Democratic Party as a structure would probably look at Pete Buttigieg. Um, but I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I think Biden will run again, and it'll probably be Biden DeSantis if I had to put money on it right now. And our media And our political class will do such an incredible job of normalizing DeSantis. It's going to be really disturbing. I'll just say that. I'll just say that. But I don't know. I think honestly, and I'll go ahead and I'll put this out there, and I hope sometime in the future, a couple of years from now, that you will remember me saying this and it comes true. I think the leader of the future and the person who's going to really embody this stuff is currently in the organizing movement, is currently in the burgeoning labor movement, is currently working on solidarity movements and union drives and local responses to austerity and disasters. I think that at some point we're going to look up and realize that these communities have produced people with incredible talent and incredible leadership skills. And I think what we'll notice is that the consequences of neoliberalism and austerity will produce the solution. I think that's where it'll go. All right. So that's going to bring us to the end of this episode of Bourbon Talk. I appreciate y'all hanging out. We no fancy mic, and as a result, we didn't get interrupted. I hope it sounded okay. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Like I said, share this with a friend, share this with a family member, share this with somebody that might even disagree with it. Because we really, really need to start talking about what this is going to mean if we continue to go down this path. As always, if you haven't pre-ordered Midnight Kingdom, do that. It helps me. It helps the book, especially as we get closer and closer to publication date. Maybe if we have like really good pre-orders, we'll get a pretty good tour out of it. I'll come and hang out at your town, and I can see you at a Barnes and Noble or something along those lines. That'd be cool. Looking forward to that. American Rule, I didn't get to do that because of COVID. So that'll be really nice to get out there and mix it up a little bit. A reminder for election night, we'll be hanging out with Democracy-ish. We're working on some things. We're hoping it'll be a really good show for everybody and a great alternative for all of this. Just absolute ridiculous madness that our media peddles. This week, Nick and I are going to record the regular show tomorrow. We have a couple of interviews set up. Also, I'm working on getting a Democratic strategist. I have a lot of really disgruntled Democratic strategists who have been reaching out. And most of them are scared to talk. Most of them are scared to come on the podcast and talk about what they've seen and what they've experienced. But I think I've got one. I think I've got one who really wants to talk about what's going on. Maybe we'll do one of those 60 minutes voice distorters. Like obviously we're not going to have a black light, blackness that will cover their face or whatever. But yeah, so I'm working on getting a disgruntled Democratic strategist to come on the show. I think we're going to record that on Tuesday. Fingers crossed that comes through. In the meantime, thank you all so much. You're wonderful. You give me hope. I always enjoy hanging out with you all. You're funny. You're smart. You take care of one another. Again, I understand being discouraged. I understand being scared. I understand just feeling like maybe it'd be better to drop out, but we can't do it. We're going to have a better future. We're going to beat this thing. We're going to have a more human and realer future. We're going to have it, and we have to have faith in it, and we have to have faith in one another. Cheers to you. All right, everybody. Have you a good week.